This dog froze in shock when she realized what she just gave birth to. But what came next? No one, not even her owner, was ready for it. 5 perfect puppies lay in a neat little row, except for one. Right in the middle was something no one could explain, tiny, pink, hairless, and fighting for every single breath. The mother froze, staring at her own newborn like it didn't belong. And when the vet saw it, his face went pale. Because this wasn't just about survival. This was about a battle against nature itself. A fight that would push one woman to the edge, tear open old wounds, and force her to answer a question that could break her heart. If you risk everything to save the weakest life, what happens when the world tells you to let it go? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Sarah's scrubs clung to her tired body as she fumbled with her house keys. The evening air was thick with summer heat, and all she wanted was a cool shower and her bed. As the door swung open, she kicked off her white nursing shoes, leaving them in a heap by the entrance. "Bella, girl, where are you?" Her voice echoed through the quiet house. Usually, her German shepherd would come bounding to greet her, tail wagging and eyes bright. But tonight was different. A low whimper drew her attention to the living room. There, on Bella's plush bed near the window, lay her faithful companion. The dog's sides heaved with heavy pants, her normally alert ears laying flat against her head. "What's wrong, sweet girl?" Sarah crossed the room quickly, her nurse's instincts taking over. As she knelt beside the bed, her hand gentle on Bella's flank, realization dawned. "Oh my goodness, the puppies! They're coming now?" Bella's dark eyes met hers, full of trust and discomfort. Sarah's heart raced as she noticed the trembling in her dog's body and the rhythmic tensing of her muscles. All thoughts of exhaustion vanished as adrenaline kicked in. Okay, we can do this." Sarah jumped to her feet, mind whirling with everything she needed. "Stay right there, girl. Just breathe." She rushed through the house, gathering supplies with practiced efficiency. Old towels from the linen closet, a plastic basin filled with warm water, the first aid kit she kept stocked for emergencies. Her hands trembled as she arranged everything around Bella's bed, creating a makeshift delivery area. With shaking fingers, she pulled out her phone and dialed Dr. Kent's number. The vet answered on the 3rd ring. "Sarah? Everything okay?" "It's Bella, she's in labor." Sarah's voice cracked slightly as another whimper came from her dog. "I've got towels and warm water, but I could use some guidance." "You've got good instinct, Sarah. Just stay calm." Kent's steady voice helped center her. "How far apart are her contractions?" Sarah watched as Bella tensed again. "Maybe 5 minutes?" "She's panting hard." While Kent explained what to watch for, Sarah settled beside Bella, stroking her soft ears. The familiar texture brought back memories of the day they'd found each other. She'd been drowning in grief then, the house too quiet after Tom's passing. The shelter volunteer had led her to Bella's kennel, and those soulful brown eyes had seen straight through to her broken heart. "You helped me heal," Sarah whispered to Bella now, scratching that special spot behind her ear. "And I'm going to help you through this." Bella's first serious contraction made her yelp, and Sarah's heart clenched. She kept one hand on her dog's head while the other hovered near her back end, ready to help if needed. "That's it, girl. You're doing great." The words came automatically, the same soothing tone she used with scared patients in the ER. Minutes ticked by like hours. Sarah's knees ached from kneeling on the hardwood floor, but she didn't dare move. Bella's pants grew more intense, her body straining with effort. Then, suddenly, a tiny, dark shape emerged. Sarah's hands were steady now as she gently helped clear the membrane, her medical training taking over. The puppy, black and tan like its mother, gave a tiny squeak as it took its first breath. "Oh, Bella, look at this beautiful baby!" Tears pricked Sarah's eyes as she carefully placed the squirming newborn near its mother's belly. Bella immediately began cleaning her puppy, her tongue gentle but thorough. Sarah checked the time. 9:07 p.m. As she watched Bella tend to her firstborn, a wave of emotion washed over her. This moment felt like a new beginning, not just for the puppy, but for all of them. Before she could get too lost in the moment, Bella tensed again. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing their night was far from over. "Ready for round 2, sweet girl?" The clock on the wall ticked steadily as Bella's contractions resumed. Sarah settled in beside her faithful friend, ready to welcome the next little life into the world. Sarah's confidence grew with each successful delivery. The second and third puppies arrived smoothly within the next hour, both healthy German Shepherd pups with the classic black and tan coloring. Her hands moved with practiced ease now, helping clear airways and guiding each newborn to Bella's warmth. The rhythm felt familiar, like a dance she'd rehearsed countless times during her years in the ER, though this choreography was gentler, more intimate than the urgent pace of hospital work. Between contractions, she snapped quick photos on her phone, her fingers leaving slight smudges on the screen. The red-tinged prints marked her involvement in this miracle, a reminder of the life literally passing through her hands tonight. "Look at these precious babies," she texted her sister, adding a heart emoji. The reply came instantly. "They're beautiful. How's Mama doing?" Sarah glanced at Bella, who lay contentedly cleaning her trio of pups. The mother dog's tongue moved methodically over each squirming body, her amber eyes half closed in concentration. Despite her obvious exhaustion, her eyes remained bright and alert, checking Sarah's face occasionally as if seeking reassurance. "Like a champ," Sarah typed back, then set her phone aside, wanting to be fully present for what remained of the birthing process. The house had settled into a peaceful rhythm. The wind outside had died down, and even the old farmhouse creaks seemed to have quieted in reverence of the new lives entering the world. Sarah retrieved her coffee from the kitchen, grimacing as she sipped the lukewarm liquid that had once been steaming hot when she'd first rushed to Bella's side. She settled back beside Bella's bed, watching the puppies squirm and nurse, their tiny paws kneading against their mother's belly. The hard part seemed behind them. As midnight approached, Bella's contractions intensified again. The fourth puppy emerged without trouble, another perfect miniature of its mother, with the same distinctive markings already visible on its wet fur. Sarah smiled, already reaching for a clean towel to dry the newcomer, her movements now confident and sure where they had been, tentative just hours before. She had just started gathering the soiled towels when Bella whined. The sound was different, higher pitched, more urgent than before. The dog's muscles tensed visibly beneath her fur, rippling along her abdomen. But nothing happened. Minutes ticked by. Sarah's heart rate picked up as she remembered Dr. Kent's warnings about complications, his cautious voice echoing in her mind. "Call immediately if there's more than 30 minutes between deliveries." "Come on, girl," she murmured, setting aside the laundry and moving closer to her pet. Her fingers found the spot on Bella's belly that Kent had described, and she began gentle massage movements, applying slight pressure in downward strokes. Bella panted harder, her eyes fixed on Sarah's face with such trust that it made Sarah's throat tighten with emotion. The minutes stretched endlessly. The clock on the wall seemed to slow its ticking as Sarah maintained her gentle ministrations. Her arms ached from the continuous massage, but she didn't dare stop. Sweat beaded on her forehead, despite the coolness of the spring night. Just when she considered calling Kent again, her thumb hovering over his contact in her phone, Bella gave a final push that seemed to use every ounce of her remaining strength. The last puppy slipped out, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This one was different. Shockingly so. No familiar black and tan fur covered its tiny body. Instead, wrinkled pink skin stretched over an impossibly small frame, like a baby mouse that had somehow found its way into this litter. The contrast between this strange little creature and its robust siblings was startling, almost alarming in its starkness. Sarah's hands hovered uncertainly over the motionless form. Fear gripped her chest as seconds passed without movement. The pup was so still, so fragile-looking that she was afraid her touch might crush it. "Please," she whispered, grabbing a fresh towel. She rubbed the tiny body with feather-light touches, her nursing training warring with her rising panic. Years of professional detachment crumbled as she found herself whispering silent prayers to a god she hadn't spoken to since her husband's funeral. The sound that finally came was barely audible, a squeak so faint Sarah might have imagined it. But then it came again, stronger this time, a delicate protest against the cold world it had entered. Relief flooded through her body, making her hands shake as she exhaled the breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. With utmost care, she lifted the fragile pup. It felt weightless in her palms, barely there at all, as she placed it near Bella's warm belly. Bella raised her head, nostrils flaring as she investigated this strange addition to her family. Her ears twitched forward with curiosity, then back with uncertainty. Sarah held her breath. She'd heard stories of mother dogs rejecting pups that seemed different or weak. The thought of having to hand-raise this vulnerable creature sent a wave of anxiety through her tired body. But after a long moment of sniffing, Bella began to clean the pink pup with the same gentle strokes she'd given the others, her large tongue almost engulfing the tiny body with each pass. "You're a fighter," Sarah whispered to the tiny creature as it twitched under its mother's attentions. Her eyes burned with exhaustion as she checked the clock on the wall. 2:30 a.m. Nearly 6 hours had passed since Bella's labor began, though it felt both longer and shorter somehow. She reached out to stroke Bella's head, earning a soft woof of appreciation that stirred the fur between her ears. The pink pup trembled as it sought warmth among its siblings, its movements jerky and uncoordinated compared to the others. Its translucent skin revealed the shadow of internal organs, making it look even more vulnerable. Sarah watched it, feeling a fierce protectiveness rise in her chest. In that moment, she made a silent vow. "I'll keep you alive." The promise echoed the one she'd made to her husband in his final days, a promise she couldn't keep then, despite all her medical knowledge. With careful movements, she stood and crossed to the light switch, her back protesting after hours spent hunched beside Bella's whelping box. The overhead light clicked off, leaving only the warm glow of the table lamp washing over Bella and her 5 pups. In that gentle illumination, even the strange little pink one looked peaceful, snuggled against its mother's fur, its tiny chest rising and falling with each precarious breath. Morning sunlight filtered through the living room curtains, casting warm patches across the floor. Sarah blinked awake, her neck stiff from sleeping awkwardly on the couch. She dozed off watching Bella and her newborns, not wanting to leave them alone their first night. She stretched, wincing at her sore muscles, then crawled over to check on the puppies. The 4 black and tan ones were already nursing vigorously, their tiny bodies pressed against Bella's warm belly. But something was wrong. The pink pup lay at the edge of the group, barely moving as its siblings pushed it aside in their eagerness to feed. Sarah's heart thumped painfully. With gentle hands, she lifted the hairless pup, cradling it in her palms. Its skin felt warm, but frighteningly delicate, like tissue paper that might tear at the slightest touch. The pup's chest rose and fell with rapid, shallow breaths. "Oh, little one," she whispered, grabbing her phone to call Dr. Kent's office. His receptionist squeezed her in for an immediate appointment. 20 minutes later, Sarah pulled into the clinic's parking lot. She'd wrapped the pup in the softest cloth she could find, creating a little nest to keep it warm during the drive. The waiting room was mercifully empty when she entered. Dr. Kent emerged from his office, his face kind but serious as he greeted her. "Let's have a look at this special delivery," he said, leading her to an exam room. Sarah watched anxiously as the vet examined the tiny pup. His hands were gentle but thorough as he checked its mouth, eyes, and skin. The pup barely stirred during the examination, making Sarah's worry deepen. "It's a genetic condition," Dr. Kent finally explained, straightening up. "Complete hairlessness, probably accompanied by a compromised immune system." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. Sarah, I need to be honest with you. The survival chances for a pup like this are very slim. Even with round-the-clock care, the odds aren't good. Sarah's stomach clenched as he continued softly. Sometimes it's kinder to let them go naturally, to spare them suffering. The words hit her like a physical blow. Suddenly, she was back in the ER 3 years ago, looking into the desperate eyes of a mother as she delivered the worst news any parent could hear. The woman's anguished cry still haunted her dreams sometimes. That same crushing helplessness clawed at her chest now. The drive home passed in a blur. Sarah carried the pup inside in a shoebox she'd lined with soft towels, setting it carefully on the living room floor. She sat cross-legged beside it, watching the tiny creature's struggles to move, to live. Bella padded over from her bed, leaving her other puppies momentarily to nose at Sarah's arm. The gesture was so gentle, so understanding, that Sarah's composure cracked. Tears stung her eyes as she stroked Bella's familiar fur. The silence stretched out, broken only by the soft sounds of the other puppies nursing. Sarah stared at the pink pup, remembering Dr. Kent's words. Her medical training agreed with his assessment. The practical, logical part of her mind understood the reality of the situation. But something else stirred in her heart as she watched the pup's determined little movements. Despite everything stacked against it, this tiny creature was fighting to survive. "If you're willing to fight," Sarah whispered, wiping her eyes, "so am I." With renewed purpose, she gathered supplies. She set up a heating pad beneath half of the shoebox, creating a warm zone the pup could crawl toward or away from as needed. In the kitchen, she carefully mixed formula according to Dr. Kent's instructions. Returning to the box, Sarah gently lifted the pup. It felt even smaller now, barely the weight of a breath in her hands. With painstaking care, she guided the tiny nipple of the bottle to its mouth. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the pup's mouth latched on, and it began to suckle weakly. "That's it," Sarah encouraged softly. As she watched the determined little creature feed, a name came to her. "Peach," she whispered. The pink, delicate skin made it fitting. After feeding, she adjusted the heating pad to its lowest setting, watching Peach's chest rise and fall in tiny rhythmic puffs. Each breath seemed like a small victory, a testament to the fragile but persistent will to live. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Sarah's front porch as she rocked gently in her weathered chair. Beside her, Peach slept peacefully in a small pet carrier padded with soft blankets and a heating pad. Sarah had positioned it carefully to catch just enough warmth from the fading sunlight while staying protected in the shade. The steady creak of the rocking chair nearly lulled Sarah to sleep when Mrs. Carter's voice startled her alert. The elderly neighbor had paused at the bottom of the porch steps, her usual evening walk interrupted by curiosity. "What on earth is that?" Mrs. Carter blurted, letting out a half-laugh that made Sarah's shoulders tense. The older woman peered into the carrier, her expression shifting from curiosity to something between disgust and pity. Sarah forced her lips into a smile, though her hand instinctively moved closer to Peach's carrier. "This is Peach," she explained, keeping her voice steady. "She's one of Bella's puppies. She was born with a special condition that makes her different from her siblings." Mrs. Carter's thin lips pressed together as she shook her head. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You should have done the sensible thing. Sometimes nature knows best." The words sliced through Sarah like a cold blade, but she maintained her polite smile until Mrs. Carter continued her walk, tutting and shaking her head. Only then did Sarah let her shoulders slump, the ache in her chest spreading. Inside, the other puppies nursed contentedly with Bella in their whelping box. Sarah settled on the couch, phone in hand, while Peach continued sleeping in the carrier she'd brought in. Her finger scrolled through her banking app, each number making her stomach twist tighter. The vet bills from Dr. Kent's visits were adding up, and her utility bills flashed their red, overdue warnings accusingly. Her phone buzzed, her sister's name lighting up the screen. Sarah considered letting it go to voicemail, but knew that would only lead to more calls. "Hey, Lisa," she answered, trying to sound upbeat. "Sarah, I just saw your social media post about the puppy." Lisa began, without preamble. "Have you really thought this through? Why drain yourself over a pup that might not even survive?" Sarah clenched her jaw, her free hand curling into a fist. She said little as her sister continued listing all the practical reasons this was a mistake, the same reasons Sarah's own mind whispered in quiet moments. "I have to go," Sarah finally interrupted, ending the call before Lisa could protest. She moved to sit beside Bella's whelping box, her hand automatically finding the familiar comfort of her dog's soft fur. Bella looked up at her with those understanding brown eyes, and suddenly Sarah was back in that sterile hospital room 2 years ago. The steady beep of machines had filled the silence as she watched her husband slip away, powerless to stop the cancer that took him piece by piece. She'd felt so helpless then, watching someone she loved fight a battle she couldn't win for them. But this was different. With Peach, she could do something. She could fight back against the odds, against nature's cruel lottery. Every bottle fed, every warm blanket, every gentle touch was a small victory against the helplessness that had haunted her since that night. As evening settled around the house, Sarah prepared Peach's formula with practiced movements. She lifted the tiny pup from her carrier, cradling the delicate body in her hands. Bella padded over, settling beside Sarah's chair and resting her head on her knee, watching intently as Sarah guided the tiny bottle to Peach's mouth. "We'll prove them wrong," Sarah whispered, watching Peach suckle with determination. "All of them." When the feeding was done, Sarah carefully tucked Peach back under the warm lamp she'd set up, adjusting the blankets just so. Then she lay down beside the whelping box, one hand stretched out to touch Bella's fur, her posture straight and defiant despite her exhaustion. Let the world think what it wanted. She wasn't giving up. Night settled over the house like a heavy blanket, wrapping everything in darkness except for the living room, where a warm lamp cast its gentle glow over the whelping box. The soft light created dancing shadows on the walls, and the quiet was broken only by the occasional whimper from one of the sleeping puppies. Sarah lay stretched out on her old leather couch, one arm dangling toward the floor. Her scrubs from yesterday were wrinkled from wear, but she hadn't found the energy to change. The alarm on her phone was set for every 2 hours, a relentless schedule of bottle feeding that left her feeling like she was back working night shifts in the ER. The digital clock on her phone showed 1:58 a.m. when she jerked awake, seconds before the alarm's soft beeping filled the room. Sarah groaned, her body protesting as she pushed herself up from the couch. Her muscles ached from the awkward sleeping position, and her eyes felt gritty with exhaustion. Okay, she mumbled, silencing the alarm. She shuffled over to the whelping box, kneeling beside it to check on Peach. The tiny pup lay motionless between 2 small towels, barely visible in the lamp's glow. Sarah's heart skipped a beat when she noticed how still Peach was. Reaching in, her fingers brushed against the puppy's skin. It felt cold, too cold. Panic surged through her chest, shocking away any remaining drowsiness. No, she whispered, carefully lifting Peach. Dr. Kent's warning about hypothermia echoed in her mind. These hairless pups can't regulate their body temperature if they get too cold. Sarah cupped Peach in both hands, bringing the tiny body close to her chest. She began humming softly, an old lullaby her mother used to sing, as much to calm herself as to comfort the pup. The familiar melody steadied her racing heart as she felt for signs of life. A slight movement, a weak twitch. Sarah's shoulders sagged with relief. The sound of nails clicking on hardwood made her look up. Bella had woken and padded over to investigate. The German shepherd's nose twitched as she sniffed at her struggling puppy, her brown eyes full of concern. Instead of returning to the other pups, Bella settled down right next to Sarah, pressing close against her leg. Sarah felt a wave of gratitude as she recognized what Bella was doing. The dog's body radiated warmth, adding to Sarah's efforts to heat the cold puppy. "Good girl," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're fighting for her too, aren't you?" Working quickly but carefully, Sarah prepared the formula one-handed, keeping Peach pressed against her body with the other. The kitchen seemed eerily quiet at this hour, the bottle warmer's soft hum the only sound besides Bella's steady breathing. The next few hours passed in a blur of 2-hour intervals. Each time the alarm sounded, Sarah went through the same routine. Warm the formula, feed Peach, make sure she was warm enough, check the other puppies, try to rest before the next round. As dawn approached, Sarah completed the 4th feeding of the night. Her movements were mechanical now, driven by determination rather than conscious thought. Peach had taken the formula eagerly this time, her body temperature finally stable. The first hints of morning light were beginning to seep through the curtains when Sarah collapsed back onto the couch. Her eyelids felt like they were weighted with lead, but she forced them to stay open just a little longer. Through heavy-lidded eyes, she watched as Bella approached the whelping box. The mother dog gently licked Peach, her tongue carefully grooming the hairless pup before she curled protectively around all her babies. The sight brought a tired smile to Sarah's face. "We'll make it," she whispered, her voice barely audible as sleep began to claim her. The last thing she saw before drifting off was sunlight spilling through the curtains, casting a golden glow over the fragile little pup in the box. The morning sun had climbed higher when Sarah gathered her things for a quick grocery run. She'd created a makeshift carrier for Peach using a small insulated lunchbox, carefully lined with soft towels and a portable heating pad. The setup wasn't perfect, but it would keep Peach warm during their short trip. "Be good," Sarah told Bella, who watched attentively as she secured the baby gate across the kitchen doorway. The other puppies were sleeping soundly in their box, tiny bodies rising and falling with each breath. Sarah double-checked the heating pad's temperature one last time before gently placing Peach in the carrier. The local grocery store was only 10 minutes away, but Sarah kept glancing at the carrier in her passenger seat, anxiety gnawing at her stomach. She parked close to the entrance, positioning the carrier so she could keep one hand on it while pushing her cart. Inside the fluorescent-lit store, Sarah headed straight for the essentials: bread, milk, eggs. She'd just turned down the dairy aisle when she spotted Amy and Jennifer, 2 nurses from the ER's day shift. Their eyes dropped immediately to the carrier in Sarah's hand. "Sarah," Amy called out with forced cheerfulness, "what have you got there?" Before Sarah could answer, Jennifer peered into the carrier. Her nose wrinkled slightly, and she exchanged a meaningful look with Amy. "Looks like a rat," Jennifer muttered, just loud enough for Sarah to hear. Heat rushed to Sarah's face, spreading down her neck. Her throat tightened, but she kept walking, pretending she hadn't heard. Their whispers followed her down the aisle like tiny needles pricking at her back. Sarah rushed through the rest of her shopping, keeping her head down. But as she pushed through the automatic doors into the morning sunshine, a familiar voice stopped her in her tracks. "Sarah? What are you doing here?" Claire stood there, designer purse hanging from one arm, perfect makeup already applied despite the early hour. Her eyes zeroed in on the carrier, and her expression hardened. "Is that the puppy?" Claire stepped closer, peering inside. "Oh, Sarah, this is too much. You're exhausted. I can see it in your face." "I'm fine," Sarah said, trying to step around her sister. But Claire blocked her path. "It's not like you can save every sick thing in the world. You need to be realistic about this." Something snapped inside Sarah. All the whispers, the doubtful looks, the constant questioning of her choice. It all boiled over at once. "This isn't just some sick thing," she shot back, her voice rising. "This is Peach, and she deserves a chance." Several shoppers turned to stare at them, Claire's face flushed with embarrassment. "You're making a scene," she hissed. Sarah clutched the carrier closer. "No, you're making a scene. You don't get to judge my choices." She pushed past her sister, ignoring Claire's calls to wait. The drive home passed in a blur. Sarah's hands shook on the steering wheel. angry tears threatening to spill over. When she finally made it back, she barely remembered to bring in the groceries, setting them haphazardly on the counter. She sank to the floor in the living room, her back against the couch. The tears finally broke free, running down her cheeks in hot streams. Bella padded over from the kitchen, settling beside her and resting her head on Sarah's lap. The gentle weight was comforting, grounding. Sarah lifted Peach from the carrier, cradling the tiny body against her chest. "Maybe they're right," she whispered, voice trembling. "Maybe I can't do this." Peach stirred slightly, pressing closer to Sarah's warmth. Sarah watched the steady rise and fall of that tiny pink chest, felt the flutter of a heartbeat against her palm. Something shifted in her expression. She sat up straighter, wiped her eyes with her free hand. "No," she said aloud, her voice stronger now. "We're doing this." She reached for a notepad on the coffee table, balancing Peach carefully as she wrote. The pen moved decisively across the paper as she created a detailed feeding schedule, breaking down every 2-hour interval. Sarah grabbed a marker and circled the first feeding time in bold strokes. The dark lines stood out against the white paper like a declaration of war against doubt. The morning sunlight filtered through Sarah's kitchen window, casting warm patches across the countertop where she stood with Peach cupped gently in her hands. A week had passed since those first challenging days, marked by sleepless nights and constant worry. The other puppies tumbled around in their box nearby, their playful yips filling the air. Sarah placed Peach carefully on the digital kitchen scale she'd bought specially for this purpose. The numbers flickered before settling. 7 ounces. She let out a small breath of relief. It wasn't much compared to her siblings, who were already plump and energetic, but it was progress. "Look at you," Sarah murmured, lifting Peach back into her palm. "You're getting stronger every day." Her phone sat propped against the coffee maker doctor. Kent's number already dialed. She balanced Peach in one hand while pressing speaker with the other. 7 ounces, she reported when he answered, trying to keep the pride from her voice. "She's taking the formula better now, and her skin feels warmer." There was a pause on the other end. "I have to admit, Sarah, I didn't expect—" Dr. Kent cleared his throat. "Well, keep doing what you're doing. It seems to be working." Sarah's heart swelled at those words. Coming from Kent, who'd been so doubtful at first, it felt like winning a small battle. "Thanks, Doc, I will." Evening settled in, painting the living room in soft shadows. Sarah had discovered that having some background noise helped steady her hands during feeding time. She clicked play on her phone, and gentle piano music filled the room. Peach lay in her palm, pink skin wrinkled but somehow less fragile looking than before. Sarah held the tiny bottle at just the right angle, watching as Peach latched on with growing strength. "You're tougher than you look, you know that?" Sarah cooed, her voice taking on the sing-song quality usually reserved for babies. "Such a good girl, drinking all your dinner." Bella lay nearby, head resting on her paws but eyes alert, watching the feeding ritual she'd come to know so well. When Sarah started to lower Peach back into her box after a few minutes, Bella rose and nudged Sarah's arm with her nose. "What is it, girl?" Sarah asked, though she already knew. Bella had developed an uncanny sense for when Peach needed more formula. Sarah lifted the bottle again, and sure enough, Peach began drinking once more. Sarah settled back against the couch, bottle in hand, and felt a wave of contentment wash over her. Bella pressed against her side, a warm, solid presence. Peach's tiny form felt just right in her palm. The moment felt complete, perfect in its simplicity. It struck her then. She hadn't felt this kind of connection, this sense of purpose and belonging, since before Tom's illness. The realization brought no sadness, only a quiet appreciation for how life could surprise you. The old clock in the hallway chimed midnight, its soft bells mixing with the piano music. Sarah had just finished the last feeding and was watching Peach in her box, illuminated by the warm lamplight. Suddenly, Peach stirred, pushing herself up on wobbly legs. Sarah held her breath, hardly daring to move. One tiny pink paw moved forward, then another. Peach managed 3 shaky steps before tumbling onto her side. A laugh burst from Sarah's throat, bright with joy and disbelief. "Oh my God!" She scrambled for her phone, hands trembling with excitement as she opened the camera app. Peach was already trying again, determination evident in every wobbly movement. Sarah pressed record just in time to capture 5 uncertain steps before another tumble. "Look who's walking!" Sarah narrated softly, her voice thick with emotion. She stopped recording and opened her social media app, rarely used these days except for sharing occasional photos of Bella. She uploaded the video, typing quickly, "Tiny steps, big fight." While Peach dozed off in her box, Sarah curled up on the couch with her phone, Bella's head resting on her lap. The first notification popped up, a heart from her sister Claire. Then another from a coworker, followed by a comment, "Go, little fighter." Sarah smiled at the screen, watching as more hearts and encouraging messages appeared. Each one felt like a small light pushing back against the darkness of doubt she'd faced just a week ago. 2 weeks had passed since Peach's first steps, and the evening sky outside Sarah's windows had transformed from peaceful dusk to menacing darkness. Thick clouds rolled in, bringing with them an eerie greenish tint that made Sarah's skin prickle with unease. The wind picked up, whistling through the trees and rattling the window frames with growing intensity. Sarah pulled out her phone, checking the weather alert that had just buzzed. Her eyes widened at the red banner. "Flash flood warning. Seek shelter immediately. Heavy rainfall expected." The message was followed by predictions of severe thunderstorms and possible power outages. "This isn't good," she muttered, moving quickly through the house. The whelping box sat in its usual spot near the living room wall, but Sarah knew they'd need extra warmth tonight. She grabbed one end of the box, careful not to jostle its precious cargo. "Come on, little ones, let's get you somewhere cozier." The puppies, now plump and active, squirmed as she relocated their box closer to the fireplace. All except Peach, who remained curled in her usual corner, wrapped in her special blanket. Bella paced back and forth between the windows and the box, her nails clicking against the hardwood floors. Her ears twitched at every distant rumble of thunder, and she whined softly, pressing closer to Sarah's legs. "I know, girl. I don't like storms either." Sarah stroked Bella's head, trying to calm her. But another boom of thunder, closer now, sent the German Shepherd back to her nervous pacing. Sarah double-checked all the windows and doors, making sure everything was secure. The wind had picked up considerably, making the old house creak and groan. Tree branches scraped against the siding like skeletal fingers, and the first heavy drops of rain began to fall. She had just finished arranging extra blankets around the whelping box when the lights flickered. Once, twice, and then plunged the house into complete darkness. The sudden silence of all the household appliances felt deafening. "Perfect," Sarah grumbled, fumbling in the dark for the emergency lantern she kept in the kitchen drawer. Her fingers closed around its familiar handle, and she clicked it on, casting a bright beam through the darkness. The light bounced off Bella's reflective eyes as Sarah made her way back to check on the puppies. 4 little bodies squirmed and squeaked, huddling together for warmth. But when the lantern's beam fell on Peach, Sarah's heart stopped. The tiny hairless puppy lay motionless, her breathing shallow and labored. Each breath seemed to take tremendous effort, her little chest barely rising. "No, no, no," Sarah whispered, setting down the lantern and gently lifting Peach. The pup felt cold despite the blanket, her skin taking on a slightly bluish tinge that Sarah recognized all too well from her years in the ER. She grabbed her phone, trying to dial Doctor Kent's number, but the screen showed no signal bars. "Come on," she pleaded, moving around the house, trying to find even one bar of service. Nothing. Rain pounded against the windows now, the sound like hundreds of tiny hammers striking glass. Lightning flashed, illuminating the room in stark bursts, followed by thunder that seemed to shake the very foundation of the house. Sarah's mind raced. She needed oxygen, but the nearest vet was 30 minutes away. Impossible in this weather. Then she remembered the portable oxygen tank in her car's emergency kit, left over from her husband's final months. "Bella, stay with the puppies," she ordered, already moving. She grabbed her keys and dashed out to the garage, returning moments later with the small tank and her old nursing kit. Her hands shook as she worked, but her medical training took over. She found a clear plastic container in the kitchen, quickly poked several small holes in the lid for ventilation, and began rigging up a makeshift oxygen chamber using tubing from her nursing kit. "Come on, sweetheart," she murmured, carefully placing Peach in the container. She adjusted the oxygen flow, remembering how she'd done this countless times in the ER, though never for something so small and fragile. Sarah began humming softly, an old lullaby her mother used to sing, while watching Peach's breathing like a hawk. The storm raged outside, lightning illuminating her face in sharp flashes as she bent over the container, counting each of Peach's breaths. A particularly violent thunderclap shook the house, making the windows rattle in their frames. Sarah hunched protectively over the makeshift chamber, shielding it with her body. "Stay with me," she whispered into the howling storm, her words barely audible over the rain and wind. The storm showed no signs of letting up as midnight came and went. Rain hammered against the windows with the intensity of 1,000 tiny fists, while wind howled through the trees outside like a wild animal. Inside, Sarah remained crouched beside her makeshift medical station, her muscles aching from holding the same position for so long. The battery-powered lantern cast long shadows across the living room as Sarah leaned in close to check on Peach. The tiny pup's breathing remained shallow but hadn't worsened, a small victory that Sarah clung to like a lifeline. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the oxygen flow, carefully watching the rise and fall of that fragile pink chest. Bella pressed against Sarah's side, her warm bulk offering silent comfort. The German shepherd's soft whines matched the pitch of the wind, her dark eyes fixed on the plastic container that held her smallest pup. Sarah reached out with her free hand to scratch behind Bella's ears. "I know, girl," Sarah whispered. "I'm worried too." Another crack of thunder rattled the windows, making Sarah jump. The storm felt like it was directly overhead now, each lightning flash illuminating the room in harsh white bursts. Water had begun to seep under the back door, forming a small puddle that grew with each gust of wind-driven rain. Sarah's medical training kicked in as she monitored Peach's vital signs, falling back on the systematic approach that had served her well during countless emergency room crises. Check breathing rate, monitor color, ensure stable temperature. The familiar routine helped keep panic at bay. "Come on, Peach," she murmured, adjusting the tiny tube that fed oxygen into the container. "Fight for me. You've made it this far." The hours blurred together in a haze of thunder and nervous vigilance. Every time Sarah's exhaustion threatened to overtake her, another boom would jolt her back to alertness. Her neck ached from bending over the container, and her eyes burned from straining to watch Peach's breathing in the dim light. During one particularly quiet moment between thunderclaps, Sarah heard the soft sounds of the other puppies nursing. She turned to check on them, relief washing over her at the sight of 4 healthy bodies snuggled against their mother. Bella had remained remarkably calm, despite the storm, focusing all her attention on her pups and Sarah. Water continued to drip somewhere in the darkness, creating a steady rhythm that mixed with the rain outside. Sarah found herself swaying slightly to the natural percussion, fighting to keep her eyes open. Her scrubs from yesterday's shift were wrinkled and coffee-stained, but changing clothes was the last thing on her mind. "Fight for me," she repeated, her voice barely audible above the storm. The words became a mantra as she monitored Peach's breathing, adjusted the oxygen flow, and checked the container's temperature. Everything she'd learned in her years of nursing distilled down to this moment, this tiny life struggling to survive. The storm's fury gradually began to subside as the night wore on. Thunder that had once shaken the house now rumbled in the distance, and the savage drumming of rain softened to a gentle patter. The first hints of pre-dawn light began to seep through the windows, turning the darkness to a soft grey. Sarah leaned in close to the container, her heart in her throat. Through the clear plastic she watched as Peach twitched slightly, a small movement that might have gone unnoticed if Sarah hadn't been watching so intently. Then, like a miracle in slow motion, the tiny pup opened her mouth and took a proper breath. It wasn't strong by normal standards, but compared to the shallow gasping of hours before, it was like watching someone climb a mountain. Relief flooded through Sarah's body so intensely that her hands started shaking. She reached into the container with one finger, gently stroking Peach's warm skin. "You did it," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You did it, little one." Sarah's back found the wall behind her, and she slid down until she was sitting on the floor. Tears rolled freely down her cheeks as the first rays of morning sunlight pierced through the grey clouds outside, painting golden stripes across the wet windows. The storm had passed, and Peach had survived. Morning light streamed through the rain-washed windows, casting warm patches across the living room floor. Sarah moved slowly, her muscles stiff from the long night, as she gathered the scattered towels and supplies from their emergency vigil. Her hands traced wet circles on the window panes, wiping away the condensation that had built up during the storm. The house felt different in the aftermath, peaceful almost. Only the puddle by the back door and the lingering dampness in the air hinted at the night's drama. Sarah turned her attention to the makeshift oxygen chamber, carefully lifting Peach from her temporary shelter. The tiny pup felt impossibly delicate in her hands. Sarah held Peach close to her ear, listening intently. The heartbeat was faint but unmistakable, a steady rhythm that brought fresh tears to her eyes. Bella padded over, her nails clicking softly on the hardwood floor. The German shepherd's nose twitched as she sniffed her smallest pup. And then, so gently it was barely visible, she extended her tongue for a soft lick. Sarah watched as Bella's tail began to wag, just slightly, but enough to send a wave of relief through her chest. "She's going to make it," Sarah whispered, her voice rough from exhaustion. The words felt like a promise, a declaration of victory after their night-long battle. With Peach safely nestled in a warm towel, Sarah reached for her phone. Her fingers trembled slightly as she dialed Dr. Kent's number. The vet answered on the second ring, and Sarah found herself pouring out the story. The power outage, the makeshift oxygen chamber, the terrifying hours of uncertainty. "Quick thinking," Dr. Kent said, approval warming his usually professional tone. That's exactly what she needed. Keep monitoring her hydration levels carefully. These next few days will be crucial. The conversation sparked something in Sarah's nurse's brain. She hung up and immediately began searching for her old patient monitoring notebook. Finding it, she started a fresh page. Patient, Peach. Under that, she created detailed columns for feeding. Times, amounts, weight measurements, and temperature readings. Her handwriting grew steadier with each entry, the familiar medical routine bringing comfort. Sarah reached for her phone again, this time opening her social media app. She positioned Peach carefully in her palm, the morning light catching the delicate pink skin just right. The photo captured both Peach's fragility and her quiet strength. Sarah typed out the caption with care, "One storm, one miracle." Within minutes, notifications began popping up. Likes accumulated rapidly, but it was the comments that caught Sarah's attention. Some came from familiar names, co-workers, old friends, but others were from complete strangers. "Keep fighting, little one. You're both so strong. This made my day. Don't give up. Praying for your miracle pup." Sarah scrolled through the messages, feeling a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with exhaustion. After weeks of sideways glances and whispered judgments, these voices of support felt like a healing balm. As evening approached, Sarah built a small fire in the fireplace to ward off the post-storm chill. She settled cross-legged on the floor, Peach wrapped snugly in a soft piece of flannel. The fabric was barely bigger than a handkerchief, but it swaddled the tiny pup perfectly. Bella lay nearby, her maternal attention divided between Peach and her other puppies, who tumbled and played in an energetic heap. Their healthy romping provided a stark contrast to Peach's stillness, but Sarah no longer saw that as a weakness. She ran one finger gently along Peach's smooth skin, marveling at its warmth. "You're tougher than they'll ever know," she whispered to the sleeping pup. The firelight danced across Peach's pink skin, giving it an almost luminous quality. Sarah picked up her phone again, scrolling through the day's messages of encouragement. Each one reinforced what she'd known in her heart all along, that this fight was worth it, that Peach was worth it. The hope that flickered in Sarah's tired eyes matched the flames in the fireplace, warm and steady and refusing to die out. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows, casting cheerful patterns on the tile floor. Sarah sat at her wooden kitchen table, a small digital scale positioned carefully in front of her. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted Peach, now 3 weeks old, and placed her gently on the scale's smooth surface. The numbers flickered, then settled. 11 ounces. "Yes," Sarah whispered, punching the air with both fists. She quickly steadied herself to catch Peach, who wobbled on the scale's platform. Bella, who had been watching intently from her spot near the table, wagged her tail vigorously, picking up on Sarah's excitement. Her brown eyes sparkled as she watched her smallest pup being lifted carefully off the scale. Around them, Peach's siblings created happy chaos in the kitchen. They tumbled over each other, their little paws skittering on the tile as they explored every corner. One black and tan puppy sniffed curiously at Sarah's slipper, while another tried to climb into Bella's water bowl, creating a small splash. Sarah cradled Peach close to her chest, beaming. "Look at you, getting bigger every day," she cooed, running a gentle finger along Peach's smooth pink skin. The tiny pup responded with a soft wiggle, pressing closer to Sarah's warmth. Later that afternoon, Sarah transformed a corner of the living room into a special exercise area for Peach. She arranged soft blankets in a circular pattern, creating a cozy pen where Peach could practice walking without getting knocked over by her more boisterous siblings. The makeshift enclosure looked like a tiny fortress of fleece and flannel. "There you go, sweet girl," Sarah murmured, setting Peach down in the center of the pen. She pulled out her phone, opening the camera app as Peach began to move. The tiny pup's legs wobbled with each step, but she kept going, determination evident in every movement. Sarah recorded the moment, her heart swelling with pride, as Peach managed several steps before flopping onto her side. The video captured not just the walking, but also Peach's immediate attempt to get back up, that fighting spirit that had become her trademark. Opening her social media app, Sarah posted the video with careful fingers. "One day, these little legs will run." She added a heart emoji, then set her phone aside to help Peach back to her feet. Within an hour, the notification sounds became constant. The video spread quickly through their small town's social networks, gathering likes and shares. Sarah scrolled through the comments, smiling at the encouraging messages, until one particular comment made her freeze. It was from someone named Maria Chen, identifying herself as a therapy animal trainer. "She has the spirit of a healer. Let me know when she's ready." Sarah's heart pounded as she read and reread the words. Her hands shook slightly as she set down her phone, mind racing with possibilities. Peach as a therapy dog? The same little pup everyone had written off as too weak to survive? She looked at Peach, who had fallen asleep in her soft pen. Even in sleep, there was something special about her. A gentleness, a resilience that seemed to radiate from her tiny form. Sarah thought about all the patients she'd seen in the ER who could use a dose of hope, who needed to see that even the most fragile beings could survive and thrive. As night fell, Sarah sat in her favorite armchair, a journal open on her lap. The The warm glow of the lamp created a cozy circle of light around her. Bella lay nearby on her bed, all 5 puppies snuggled against her warm fur. Sarah watched them for a moment, then began to write. "I thought saving Peach was for me," she wrote, her pen moving steadily across the page. "Maybe it's bigger than that." She paused, looking over at the sleeping puppies. Peach, wrapped snugly in her special blanket, stirred slightly in her sleep and pressed closer to Sarah's hand that rested near her. "You're going to do something amazing, little one," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible in the quiet room. The late morning sun painted Sarah's backyard in warm, golden light. At 6 weeks old, the puppies had finally been weaned, and Sarah decided it was time for their first outdoor adventure. She spread a thick checkered blanket on the grass, smoothing out the wrinkles and creating a safe space for the little ones. Bella pranced around the yard, her tail wagging with excitement as she inspected the blanket and the surrounding area. Her maternal instincts were still strong, even though her pups now ate solid food. She circled back to the patio door, where Sarah stood with all 5 puppies gathered around her feet. "Ready for some sunshine?" Sarah asked, opening the door wider. The 4 furry puppies tumbled out eagerly, their little paws touching grass for the first time. They froze for a moment, surprised by the new texture, before bouncing forward with typical puppy enthusiasm. Their black and tan coats gleamed in the sunlight as they explored their new world. Behind them came Peach, more cautious than her siblings. She wore a tiny pink sweater that Sarah had found online, custom-made for hairless dogs. The soft wool protected her sensitive skin from the sun and kept her warm. Sarah had been so excited when the package arrived, carefully trying it on Peach, while Bella watched with curious eyes. "Come on, sweet girl," Sarah encouraged, walking beside Peach as she took her first steps onto the grass. The tiny pup lifted each paw carefully, her head tilted in concentration. Despite her bare skin and smaller size, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that made Sarah's heart swell. Movement caught Sarah's eye, faces appearing over the fence. Mrs. Peterson from next door stood on her tiptoes, peering over with undisguised curiosity. The elderly couple from 2 houses down had paused their morning walk to watch through the chain-link fence at the front of the yard. Sarah felt a familiar tension in her shoulders, but forced herself to relax. Suddenly, excited voices rang out as the Peterson kids, Tommy and Lisa, came running through their side gate. Their mother called out a hasty, "Sorry!" but Sarah waved it off with a smile. The children stopped short of the blanket, their eyes wide as they took in the scene. "Can we see them?" Tommy asked, bouncing on his toes. He looked about 8, with untied shoelaces and a Captain America t-shirt. "Of course," Sarah replied, patting the blanket beside her. "Just move slowly so you don't frighten them." The children settled down, and the puppies immediately swarmed them, tails wagging and tongues flicking out for kisses. Peach stayed close to Sarah, watching her siblings with interest, but maintaining her characteristic caution. Tommy noticed her then, his forehead wrinkling in confusion. "What's wrong with her?" he asked, pointing at Peach. The question wasn't unkind, just the direct curiosity of a child. Sarah knelt down beside him, gently scooping Peach into her lap. "Nothing's wrong," she explained with a warm smile. "She's just different, and different can be amazing." She stroked Peach's smooth head, adding, "She's actually incredibly special." Tommy tilted his head, considering this. Then slowly he reached out one finger toward Peach. The tiny pup stretched her neck forward and gave his finger a delicate lick. Tommy's face broke into a huge grin. "She's soft," he exclaimed, surprised. "Like velvet." Lisa scooted closer too, and soon both children were taking turns gently petting Peach, who soaked up the attention with growing confidence. Sarah watched as the initial strangeness melted away, replaced by simple acceptance and delight. The afternoon passed peacefully, with the puppies alternating between playing and napping on the blanket. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, Sarah gathered the sleepy pups into her arms. "Time to head in," she called to Bella, who helped herd her children toward the house. Inside, After settling the puppies in their pen, Sarah checked her phone. A new message from Maria Chen, the therapy trainer, lit up the screen. "When Peach is old enough, bring her in. She could be perfect for our program." Sarah looked down at Peach, now curled up contentedly in her arms. The tiny sweater rose and fell with each breath, and her eyes were heavy with sleep after her big day. Bella padded over, pressing against Sarah's legs as she often did when sharing a quiet moment. "Looks like Peach has a bigger destiny," Sarah whispered to Bella, running her fingers through the shepherd's thick fur. The kitchen felt unusually quiet that September morning. Sarah sipped coffee, watching Bella doze in the golden puddle of sunlight streaming through the window. 3 puppies had gone to new homes, leaving just Bella, Sarah, and little Peach. Empty spaces where puppy beds once clustered in the corner now collected dust, a stark reminder to Sarah how quickly things changed, how life moved forward whether you were ready or not. Peach tottered across the tile with tentative steps, her bright blue sweater making her look like a piece of sky come to life against the cream-colored floor. At 3 months, she was still remarkably small for her age, barely the size of Sarah's hand when curled up, but steady now on her delicate legs, her eyes sparkling with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there during those touch-and-go first weeks. Sarah glanced at her calendar hanging on the refrigerator, the appointment circled in red. 10 a.m., therapy dog evaluation. Her stomach fluttered with nervous anticipation. "Today's the big day, sweet girl," Sarah said, kneeling down to scratch behind Peach's ears, careful not to disturb the fine wisps of fur that had finally started growing in patches. "Let's get you ready for your debut." She retrieved the special harness from its hook by the door, the smallest size available, with extra padding Sarah had sewn herself for Peach's sensitive skin. With practiced gentleness, Sarah carefully buckled each strap, checking them twice to make sure nothing pinched or rubbed. Bella padded over from her sunny spot, circling them both before giving Peach an encouraging nuzzle, as if understanding the importance of the day. "We'll be back soon," Sarah promised Bella, gathering her keys and Peach's special carrier with the built-in heating pad that maintained her body temperature. Her hands trembled slightly as she secured the latch. So much rode on today's evaluation, not just for Peach's future, but for Sarah's heart, which had slowly begun beating with purpose again. During the 20-minute drive to the training center, Sarah prayed quietly, words tumbling out in a whispered stream of hope. The parking lot was nearly full when they arrived. Inside the brightly lit training center, several handlers stood with golden retrievers, chocolate labradors, and standard poodles wearing professional training vests, all wagging tails and confident postures. Sarah felt a wave of self-consciousness as she lifted tiny, sweater-clad Peach from her custom carrier. The little dog barely weighed 4 pounds, looking more like a stuffed toy than a therapy candidate. A few handlers poorly concealed their surprise, exchanging glances and whispers behind cupped hands. One tall man with a German shepherd actually chuckled. A silver-haired woman with kind eyes and practical shoes approached them, clipboard in hand. "You must be Sarah and Peach. I'm Dana. We spoke on the phone." Her voice held none of the skepticism Sarah had grown accustomed to hearing. Dana knelt down, extending her hand palm up at Peach's level. Peach sniffed it delicately, her tiny pink nose working overtime, then pressed her smooth head against Dana's fingers in a gesture of trust that made Sarah's heart swell. "She's beautiful," Dana said softly. "Shall we begin the evaluation? We'll take it at her pace." For the next hour, Peach walked calmly on her leash without pulling, maintained her composure when approached by strangers, and stayed relaxed during handling exercises where her ears, paws, and tail were gently touched. The wheelchair test made Sarah particularly nervous, triggering memories of her husband's final days in hospice, but Peach showed no fear, sitting calmly as Dana wheeled around her, even allowing herself to be lifted onto a lap. When Dana approached with the final evaluation sheet, Sarah barely breathed, her fingers instinctively finding the circular scar on her wedding ring finger where metal had once rested. The trainer smiled warmly, holding out a blue folder embossed with the program's logo. "She's a natural," Dana announced, her voice carrying across the room where other evaluations were still in progress. Peach has exactly what we look for in therapy animals: gentleness, patience, and an innate ability to connect with people. Her size and unique appearance will be especially comforting to children who feel different themselves. Sarah's vision blurred with tears as she accepted the certification folder, its weight in her hands far greater than mere paper. The drive home felt surreal, as if she were floating slightly above the driver's seat. In her carrier on the passenger side, Peach dozed peacefully, unaware she had just changed both their lives forever. "You did it, Peach," Sarah whispered, reaching over to stroke the sleeping dog with one finger. "You're going to help so many people." As they pulled into the driveway, Bella appeared in the front window, her dark silhouette framed perfectly against the glass, tail wagging like a banner of triumph, welcoming her smallest puppy home as a certified therapy dog. 3 months had passed since Peach's certification, and the children's hospital waiting room hummed with quiet activity. Morning sunlight streamed through large windows, casting warm patches on the colorful carpet where a few kids played with toys. Sarah sat in a small plastic chair, her heart full as she watched Peach curl contentedly in her lap. The tiny dog wore her official therapy vest, pink with white lettering that proclaimed "Therapy Dog" in cheerful letters. Sarah smoothed a wrinkle in the vest, still amazed at how far they'd come. Peach had grown into her role beautifully, though she remained small enough to fit comfortably in a child's arms. Her bare skin felt warm against Sarah's hands, and her tail wagged gently as she observed the room with bright, attentive eyes. Across the waiting area, a little girl caught Sarah's attention. She couldn't have been more than 7, with thin arms and a surgical mask covering half her face. Despite her fragile appearance, curiosity sparked in her eyes as she pointed at Peach and whispered to her mother, "Is that a doggy?" Sarah smiled warmly and stood up, cradling Peach securely. She walked over with careful steps, noting how the girl's eyes widened with each foot closer they came. "Her name's Peach," Sarah said softly, kneeling to the girl's eye level. "Would you like to say hello?" The child nodded shyly, her paper mask crinkling with the movement. Sarah settled into a chair beside her, placing Peach gently on her lap where the girl could reach her easily. Peach immediately oriented towards the child, her tail wagging with gentle enthusiasm. When Peach's tiny pink tongue darted out to lick the girl's tentative fingers, a giggle erupted from behind the mask. The sound was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "She's funny," the girl declared, growing bolder with her pets. "She doesn't have any fur." Sarah nodded, watching the interaction with tender attention. "That's right, she's special, just like you." The magical moment attracted attention. Other children began drifting over, drawn by curiosity and the sound of laughter. Soon, a small circle formed around Sarah's chair. Young hands reached out eagerly to touch Peach's smooth skin, and delighted whispers filled the air. "She feels like velvet. Look at her sweater. Can she do tricks?" Peach basked in the attention, moving carefully from child to child, offering gentle licks and accepting pets with endless patience. Her tail wagged steadily, and her eyes remained bright and engaged with each new friend she made. A few nurses paused in their rounds, smiling at the scene. One pulled out her phone to snap photos, mentioning something about the hospital newsletter. Another nurse, older with kind eyes, touched Sarah's shoulder lightly. "She's giving these kids something medicine can't. Hope," she said softly. "Look at their faces." Sarah felt tears threatening to spill, but held them back with a smile. She watched as Peach gently nuzzled a boy's hand where an IV line entered his wrist, making him laugh instead of wince. Each interaction felt like a small miracle, a moment of joy in a place that often held too much fear and pain. Later, as their visit concluded, Sarah carefully buckled Peach into her special carrier. The tiny dog yawned, tired but content after sharing her unique brand of healing. Sarah paused, one hand resting on Peach's warm back, remembering all the doubts and difficulties that had brought them here. The stormy nights, the whispered criticisms, the moments of fear when Peach's survival seemed uncertain. "You weren't a mistake," she whispered, stroking Peach's smooth head. "You were my miracle." Outside in the parking lot, Bella waited patiently in the car, her tail immediately thumping against the seat when she spotted them. Sarah secured Peach's carrier and slid behind the wheel. As they pulled away from the hospital, the setting sun painted the sky in soft pinks and golds. Peach dozed peacefully in her carrier, worn out from her day of bringing joy to others. Sarah drove home with a smile that reached deep into her soul, her heart finally at peace. They had both found something greater than mere survival. They had found their purpose. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.